I've already broken my no spoilers rule, and the video hasn't even started. Just by telling you that this is a movie about movies, number 10 in the series, I've spoiled one of the key plot points, but I think I know how to limit the damage. Yes, VEDA 9. Thanks. I'm only 5 days behind. The movie is Hugo from 2011, directed by Martin Scorsese. Scorsese goes PG, the man who's made some of the best, grittiest, and most brutal movies about ruthless, angry people acting out, makes a film you can take your kids to, a gentle, charming, magical film about the earliest days of the cinema. Scorsese goes 3D. He had never done that before. I'm not much of a fan of 3D, but I love this film in 3D. It's on a very short list of films that I will go out of my way to see in 3D, in large part because it was shot stereoscopically, not post-processed from 2D. Scorsese, his production designer, visual effects teams, and cinematographers clearly put a huge amount of thought into what 3D could add. What Scorsese learned about 3D that most filmmakers seem to ignore is the way it enhances the actors' performances. It not only gives depth to scenery, but to faces. Scorsese goes to Paris, but only for a few location shots. Mostly he went to Shepperton Studios, which is west of London. There they recreated a Paris train station at full scale, details added digitally. Movie magic. Now, as for the spoiler, well, that's a tough one. It made marketing this film almost impossible. It's the same problem I'm having with this review. What this movie is really about isn't revealed until it's half over. Well, here's how I'm going to deal with that. I'm going to keep this short and mainly talk about things peripheral to the story. Then I'll give everyone who doesn't want to be spoiled plenty of warning to make a clean getaway. Yes, I will sacrifice the precious YouTube coin of watch time to help you avoid spoilers. I will do that for you. What I lose in watch time, maybe I'll make up in karma points. Although that might jinx the karma. Does anybody know the algorithm for karma? Is it online anywhere? I trust I'm not spoiling anything by saying that Hugo is the story of a young boy named Hugo, because if that's a spoiler, where can we go? Hugo is based on this remarkable children's book, The Invention of Hugo Cabret. It's not a typical illustrated book. It's not a graphic novel. It doesn't use the conventions of a comic book. It's quite unlike anything I've ever seen. There are large chunks which are page after page of wordless pencil drawings, almost like a storyboard for a film. And then occasionally pages of stills from actual films. And then there are chunks that are conventional prose novel, alternating pictures, words, pictures, words. In most respects, the film follows the book very closely. Hugo Cabret is a young boy who lives in the hidden parts and passages of the Montparnasse train station in Paris. Although the official management of the station has no idea, it turns out this kid is actually performing a very useful, even necessary function. He's orphaned, he's alone, he lives by stealing food, but that's the least of his secrets. As he dodges the watchful eye of the station inspector, he works obsessively to complete a secret project that he believes will unlock a message from his father. And Hugo is not the only person in the station harboring a secret. There's also an old shopkeeper who sells toys, a man with a past that he's trying to forget. It's the old man's past that makes this movie a movie about movies. It's the old man's past that Martin Scorsese wants us to remember. I will spoil that much. Boy and man, it turns out, are connected in ways that neither of them knows about. The connection is revealed as the boy meets and becomes friends with the man's goddaughter. Well, I think I've said enough for now about the events of the story. I'll just say a few words about its ingredients. Loss, separation, memory, trust, connection, love, legacy, and magic. Hugo was the most nominated film of the 2012 Oscar race, 11 nominations, including for the score by Howard Shore, who also did Ed Wood and all of Peter Jackson's Tolkien movies and about 70 other films. Hugo won 5 Oscars for sound editing and sound mixing, for cinematography and art direction, and visual effects. It's stunning to look at. If you know Scorsese's films, you know that one hallmark of his style is elaborately and meticulously choreographed gliding Steadicam shots. I'm thinking of the Copa scene in Goodfellas, the counting room scene in Casino, Jake LaMotta moving from his dressing room to the ring in Raging Bull. But those are just warm-ups for what Scorsese and his camera and effects crew have done in Hugo. One of these camera ballets in Hugo actually knits together 5 separate shots, filmed on 5 different sets over a course of days, traveling through pipes, corridors, catwalks, spiraling chutes, the inner workings of the clocks. It's all just delicious in 3D. 2012 was a big year for effects, and Hugo took the visual effects Oscar against formidable contenders such as Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2. Giving Hugo the Oscar for visual effects Seems very fitting, as I'm going to explain when we get to the spoilers. By the way, in 2012, there was one other film that tied Hugo to win 5 Oscars. Do you remember which? It was another movie about movies, The Artist, which I will cover soon. Until next time, I'm Mickeleh. DVD extras. Starting the spoiler clock now. You have this much time to leave before I start talking about the story. Hugo was one of the best reviewed films in the year 2011. It had, as I said, the most Oscar nominations, but it lost money for its producer, Graham King. The unexpected complexity of shooting 3D drove up the costs. The film never found enough audience to push it into profitability. 2011's Christmas audience went elsewhere. The family audience flocked to see The Muppets. Teens went to see vampires in Breaking Dawn. I'll talk about why I think Hugo didn't catch fire when the spoiler clock runs out. Hugo is a Paramount Pictures release by an American director from a book written and illustrated by an American author set in Paris filled with French characters. And yet, it was shot in Britain, with British actors in most of the lead roles. American Chloë Grace Moretz as Hugo's friend Isabel is one of the few exceptions, but she auditioned with a British accent, apparently fooled the director and everyone else. Scorsese follows the great American tradition of using the British to stand in for any European nation. To American ears, they sound foreign, and yet we can understand them. Or as Scorsese put it, I use the device that the English accent is from the world that they're in, even though it's Paris, 1931. It's a heightened version of that time and place. Lots of my favorite British actors, Ben Kingsley as the old man, Sacha Baron Cohen as the station inspector, are outstanding. Okay, it's spoiler time. The old man in the toy store, known to his stepdaughter simply as Papa George, turns out to be Georges Méliès, magician turned filmmaker, turned forgotten filmmaker, pioneer of special effects. He began making films in 1896. He created this iconic film image. It may have been Méliès, by the way, who first discovered the essential molecule of vlogging, the jump cut. All visual effects work, which so dominates the blockbuster movies today, traces back to Georges Méliès, who did magic before he made movies. That's why the Oscar for visual effects seems so fitting. A highlight of Hugo for me was the loving energy Scorsese and team put into recreating the studio and methods that Méliès used. These meticulously produced flashbacks are one area where Scorsese substantially expands what's in the book. I've seen some complaints that the story gets a little off the rails when Scorsese lavishes so much time and attention on Méliès. The story of Hugo's quest takes a back seat for a while. It wouldn't surprise me if some young kids get a little squirmy at that point. But to me, as a film buff, Méliès is the main course. Scorsese and team can do something that no book can. They can show us Méliès in action, show us the movies he made, show us how he made them. Why wouldn't he do that? For me, that's really the heart of the film. But the marketing couldn't mention it because... spoilers! This is a perfect film for film buffs, not for kids. But here's the conundrum. It was impossible to market the best thing about the movie without giving away the solution to Hugo's mystery. Look at the poster again. It echoes, of course, another iconic film image, Harold Lloyd dangling above downtown Los Angeles in safety last. But it writes a check that I don't think the film can cash. One of the most legendary directors of our time takes you on an extraordinary adventure. Hardly prepares you to hang out in a train station for 2 hours winding clocks, dodging the station inspector, negotiating with a toy seller for the return of your precious notebook. The poster is selling an extraordinary adventure, but it's hardly Indiana Jones. It's a lot of running back through corridors and chatting up a grumpy old shopkeeper. I'm supposed to be reviewing the film, and here I am reviewing the marketing. In the 50s, the exploitation producers would start by designing the poster first. They would know how they were going to sell it, then they would make the film to match it. I think maybe they were onto something. One of the most legendary directors of our time. Quick, find the name of the legendary director on that poster. Where is it? Oh, here it is, in that unreadable movie poster font I like to call anorexia. I wish I was at that meeting. Look, we know Scorsese is one of the top directors working today. We're very lucky to have him on this picture. But is he really the best brand for selling a kid's picture? Well, we'll just call him a legendary director. It doesn't seem to be a poster that would attract the audience that will love this movie. If it weren't for spoilers in the reviews that I read that clued me into the Méliès angle, I would never have bought a ticket. I love the way the story is built. I love the film. I enjoyed it immensely. In fact, I went back and saw it again. But the construction of the story makes the film impossible to market without spoilers. The magician Méliès invented a style of filmmaking marked with whimsy and theatricality, with fantastical sets and costumes. It's a style that audiences turned away from a century ago. World War I started, whimsy fell out of favor. But this year, in a summer where the big blockbuster movie stars a tree and a raccoon, Maybe fantasy's making a comeback. On YouTube, I find a kindred spirit to Méliès in one of my favorite young filmmakers, PJ Liguori, a.k.a. KickThePJ. Like Méliès, PJ uses obviously fantastical sets. He's never out to fool you that they're real. He's there just to astonish you and amaze you and amuse you. At the bottom, there are two kinds of movies, though, that give you a window into reality. Those are the movies that built Scorsese's legacy. And the other kind, the ones that give you a window into imagination and wonder. That's the kind Scorsese pays homage to in Hugo. Here's a trailer for Hugo. Here's one of PJ's fantastical videos. And with a new Doctor on the way, I'm gearing up for some new reviews of Doctor Who. Here's a song I wrote the last time the Doctor regenerated. And here's the rest of my series of movies about movies. It's the whole lot of them in case you've missed any. Bye now.